Good. Okay. Still stable. Let's doing it again. Oh. Okay. Just a second, folks. Of course, you're only having this problem with us. Okay. Okay. It seems like we're all here. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 7:03. Linnell, will you do the roll call?
Yes. Director Stegan,
Yes.
Director Goff,
Yes.
Director Hassai,
Here.
Director Natoli,
Here.
and President Aquino Fight.
Here. I'd like to call everyone's attention to a public notice on the first page of the agenda. I just want to make sure everyone has seen it. It should be highlighted in yellow for you. On February 20th through the 24th of this month, we will be removing the deceased or dead trees in the Kensington Park area. They've already been cordoned off, I understand, from our general manager with the yellow caution tape. And we've coordinated with the school, so they're aware. I believe I'm not sure if this is during their ski week.
It is.
It is, okay. So that will be happening, and folks should just take extra care during those days in the park area.
If I may add to that, those were caution tape off, and it was also because there were branches that were hanging and one had actually fallen and almost hit somebody. The caution tape may have been removed either appropriately or inappropriately. So just exercise caution to anyone who's watching in that area. I think if it's warranted, we'll make sure it gets put back up, maybe with a notice from the police department at this time, but the branches may have been removed and it may no longer be warranted, but it will come, like you said, that other week it's going to happen.
Great, thank you. So now we'll go to public comment in the consent calendar. So all matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and are approved by one motion and vote unless the board member or general manager first requests that a matter be removed for separate discussion and action. Individuals wishing to address the board of directors concerning consent calendar items or on matters not already on the agenda are invited to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes. Please raise your hand via Zoom if you're in Zoom, and when you're called about, or if you're in the room, please approach the podium. When you're called upon by the board president, you'll be unmuted, or you can go ahead and address us. Please state your name clearly for the audio recording. You're requested to address your comments to the president and board of directors and not to staff and or the audience. By state law, the board is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. If you have any documentation that you would like distributed to the board, please mail or email it to the clerk of the board, and the address and email are on the agenda. So I guess first we'll go to here in the room, and then we'll go to comments in Zoom.
Okay, I'm Lynn Wolter. I'm here to speak on Mark Constantini's behalf. He asked that I read his letter into the record. KPPCSD Board President Alexandra Aquino-Fike and Directors Sarah Goff, Sylvia Hassai, Cassandra Duggan, and Eileen Natoli. Please consider putting on the next KPPCSD meeting agenda a motion to redeliver the May 19th, 2021 letter from then KPPCSD General Director Marty Brown to the then Kensington Fire District General Manager Bill Hansel, indicating that the police district is desirous of keeping the Kensington Police headquartered inside our public safety building post renovation. In the district's words, the police district wishes that, quote, the Kensington Police Department, KPD, close paren, remain and exist in the future renovated public safety building. To that end, the KPPCSD formally requests that the KFPD permit the KPD to remain in the future renovated public safety building and provide 1,220 square feet in the building, as it currently does today, to headquarter the KPD now and into the future. The letter, that was an end quote. The letter carries forth no expiration date, and since government is contiguous, the KPPCSD's letter of intent is clear, and the police district's wishes remain unchanged, in my opinion. And again, this is speaking on behalf of Mark Constantini. Also, there were multiple written requests over several months to the then Fire District Board President that a public discussion of this letter be agendized and addressed at a fire board meeting. These requests came from both the public and from a fire district director. All of those requests were denied by then Fire District Board President and then Fire District General Manager. Accordingly, the letter was neither agendized nor publicly discussed at a fire board meeting prior to the board's vote to permanently dislocate our police department from the public safety building. Multiple architectural plans have shown that a co-headquartering of the KPD and the contracted El Cerrito Fire Department personnel is feasible, and the last police chief's report to the board, which was created when the KPD was still in the public safety building, states that the KPD is 100% compliant in all phases, which also supports the notion that the public safety building can remain as a dual-use facility. Do I still have time? Okay. Furthermore, based on the mandate declarative margins of victory for our new police and fire board majorities, it is clear that the vast majority of our tax-paying Kensington families, who are the ones paying for this renovation, definitely want a police station in the public safety building when it reopens. It is my opinion that the wishes and input of the Kensington voters, who are our taxpayers, should be respected and considered. Redelivering that letter to the fire district would, in my view, go a long way in demonstrating such respect and consideration of the Kensington taxpayers, because it will help the new fire board majority agendize public discussion and evaluation of the police district's wishes. Moreover, it would send a clear message to the Kensington people that the police board now intends to work with the fire board to bring our Kensington police back home as soon as possible. The KPPCSD's letter is attached. Thank you in advance for your consideration. Mark Constantini, Kensington taxpayer, husband, and father. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing your opinion with us, and thank you, Lynn, for helping Mark. Next, we have another person at the podium.
A. Stephen Stilk, Madam President. According to the financial report, the total amount of Bayview franchise fee received in the first 5 months of the current fiscal year was $2,988. That is considerably less than it should be, which is roughly 40% of the annual fee of $110,000. In fact, the report notes that it is only 8% of the expected amount without a notation as to why. According to previous reports, no franchise fee revenue has been logged in since July. Does Bayview no longer make payments each month as required by the agreement? The fee paid to the county was $0. According to past reports, no county payment has been made since January 2022. And the amount paid in the previous fiscal year was $17,222, less than half of what it should be. Does the district no longer have to make franchise fee payments to the county? Perhaps the reports are just not up to date with respect to waste management, therefore not very useful. I, like other members of the public, urge you to reinstate the Finance Committee, or at least one board member should be responsible for carefully reviewing the financial report each month until there is staff with time and the responsibility to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilk, for all of that great analysis and for sharing your thoughts with us. See someone in Zoom. Nell, could you unmute Rodney? And just for folks on Zoom, we've got about 7 individuals here in person, and it looks like we've got 21 individuals in Zoom.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you, Madam President. I wanted to call the board's attention to a situation on one of the paths in Kensington, the Ardmore path. Just below the Arlington, there is a portion of the path that's now blocked off with police caution tape, and there's concrete that's at an angle because of after the storms, a tree on an adjacent property fell, hit a tree on the path, resulting in a problem. And so now part of the path is blocked off. And I think this is an example of what the future of the paths will look like if we don't achieve public ownership. There's really like the property owner is trying to work with somebody to figure out like who the work that's going to be done to fix the path and what's the standard to which the path needs to be improved to fix this problem. But he's had a lot of frustration. He's talked to the county. And they've said, well, we don't own it. We can't really help you. And I believe he's talked to the police chief. And so he's really kind of at a loss as to what he is supposed to do at this point. But this is just the perfect example of what's going to happen if we do nothing with the paths, if we continue to say that public ownership is not something that's needed. We presented to past boards and kind of got that pushback that, we've had over 100 years of the paths and there is no public ownership. So what's wrong with just letting that continue? And this is just the first of, these paths over time are going to need upkeep. We're going to see more of these problems. This path it's fortunate because there's kind of 2 sides to it. So you can safely get by on one of the sides of the path, although there is the concern that that tree may fall and be of hazard to other people. And lots of people use that path. That's the most used path of the Kensington Path system. So I think the good news is I've talked to many members of this board about this issue, and you guys have seemed receptive to us bringing this before you sometime in the near future and is discussing the paths in detail, the idea of public ownership in coordination with the county. So I just want you and the people from the community hearing this meeting to pay attention to this issue, because this is the perfect example of what we're going to see more of if we do not achieve public ownership of the paths. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. Any other comments here in the room or in Zoom?
There's one in the panelist. Lisa.
Hello,
Hi, Lisa.
are you able to hear me? Sorry about that.
Yes.
I just wanted to quickly address A. Stevens Delk regarding the finance report. We receive payments from Bayview and we receive quarterly reports, and we just caught everything up through December, and unfortunately these finance reports have always run about a month and a half behind because of how the county runs their reconciliations. And so as of the December,
Lisa, are you still there?
oh, can you hear me?
You cut off for a second. As you
Okay, sorry about that. We A. Stevens Delk is correct. We have received somewhere in the neighborhood of around $45,000 to $47,000 so far as of the end of the year, and that will show up in the mid-year report.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Lisa is the KPPCSD finance manager.
Yes, and I also would like to say that I fully support having a finance committee. That would be extremely helpful and appreciated.
Okay. Any comments here in the room or on Zoom? Okay, hearing none. This concludes the public comment portion of the meeting. I'd like to now turn to the consent calendar, which includes approving the meeting minutes from January 12th and February 1st of 2023, and the financial reports through November 2022 for the 2022-23 fiscal year. I'd like to ask if anyone from the board or if our GM wishes to pull anything from the consent calendar. Okay. So then at this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the items on our consent calendar. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Linnell, could you do the roll call?
Director Duggan,
Yes.
Director Goff,
Yes.
Director Hassai,
Yes.
Director Natoli,
Yes.
and President Aquino Fight.
Yes. Thanks.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. So now we will move to the discussion and action items. Or Anna, are you looking at me?
I'm with you.
Okay. The first item on the discussion section is the search for our next interim GM. As many folks know, this is Tony's last meeting with us. His hours have run out, and we will be thanking you more formally later, but we did need to immediately start searching pretty quickly for our next interim. And I want to thank the board for their hard work during the month of January and first part of February. They all graciously made time on short notice to make this interview a priority. Brent Ives of BHI Consulting has been a major help. Thank you, Brent. And he brought several impressive and experienced new candidates to the board for their consideration. After much discussion and reflection, it's my recommendation that the board consider David Aranda, but Anne, I'd love for you to also make some comments about the process.
The process, you've pretty much covered it, Madam President. The board did meet in closed session at a special meeting and interviewed several candidates. I believe that there was a majority vote for Mr. Aranda, and I was asked to prepare a contract. This contract is extremely similar to Tony's contract and the contract of the preceding interim general managers, with one exception. The general manager, the interim general manager, that we're about to hire, actually lives in Portland, Oregon. And he has asked, he knows that we want him to be in the office at least a couple days a week. So he asked for reimbursement of his travel expenses. Fortunately, it's a Southwest airline airport to airport, so the flight costs are not high. I did a little searching on that and we came up with, I believe it was a maximum of $300 round trip for each week that he comes down to the district. We also include the per diem rate set by the General Services Administration. That's the federal agency that sets rates for the federal government employees, which nowadays comes to, I believe, $189 for lodging and something like $75 for everything else. In addition, we've agreed to pay the cost of a rental car, subject to a cap. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do have some questions. I wanted to just clarify, you mentioned that there was a subject to a cap. That is a cap for all expenses, not just rental car, correct? And the cap is $639 per week.
So the cap is in effect that, because the round trip airfare is capped, the car rental is capped, and GSA provides for a set amount. So if you add all that up together, we get to 600 and whatever that number is. I'm sorry.
639.
39. I know I did the math before I drafted the staff report, but I didn't remember it.
I would prefer that we use Contra Costa's rate, which is a slightly lower rate. This is Alameda County's rate. So I was thinking maybe we would do that. I mean, if you're looking at, maybe you're using the city of Berkeley versus Contra Costa, because I checked it myself as well. And I think both come up, but.
I did notice that.
I agree. I wanted to use Contra Costa as well.
And I went back and forth on that, and I'm happy to make the change if that's what the board wishes.
I mean, it doesn't matter in the end, in a way, because this is a capped contract, right? So whether it's 189 or 165 at the end of the day, I mean, he's asking for reimbursement. This is not a per diem. We're not giving him just a per diem, correct? We're actually reimbursing.
I believe we are giving him a per diem for the lodging and expense and incidentals. And I should mention that the 639 number comes from my adding up the items that I list in section 7B of the contract. So the amount would go down if we use the Contra Costa rate. The reason I didn't do that was because the GSA uses as its key cities Antioch and Concord, and I think it's Brentwood or one of the others out there, whereas they use for their key city in Alameda, Oakland,
Right.
which is obviously a lot closer to Kensington. Now, again, I'm happy to make the change to the Contra Costa rate if that's your pleasure.
It's not that important to me. I was just thinking because we are in Contra Costa, but I realized that if you put in Berkeley, it comes up with maybe both. I've tried it a couple ways, so it's not that important to me. Honestly, it's a small amount of money, but if others feel, strongly about it, I would be in favor of it. I was just, I misunderstood, thinking that, it's a little confusing here because we do a reimbursable cap, as opposed to just a bit, we could just give an amount. But I suppose if he doesn't make it for 2 days, it could be a per day, a per diem. It might be much simpler administratively to say for every day he's in the office, it's this amount of money and that's it. No receipts and all that. I mean, but I don't know.
I understand that. And that was the way it was originally drafted. However, it was Mr. Randa who noted that Southwest Airlines flights can range considerably. And if he plans enough in advance, he can actually get flights that are significantly cheaper than what I used as kind of my estimate. And so he suggested that I put in the up to, which of course means we would have to ask for receipts. And the same reasoning goes for the rental car. they fluctuate a lot. That's why I wanted to put a cap on it.
Okay.
But that's why I put in the receipts and the reimbursement. I do know that there's an administrative burden there.
Okay. I'm satisfied. Thank you.
I have a different take, and that's that I think the process to find a general manager here was rushed, frankly, with virtually no time for discussion built into the schedule after the interviews. That said, while I think the candidate interviewed well and has relevant experience, I don't believe he was the best of the 3 candidates we interviewed. We don't know how long it's going to be before we find a permanent general manager. Thus, the reimbursement proposal will significantly impact our budget for an indefinite amount of time. Our greater need is police services, and Chief Gankes has been actively seeking and interviewing candidates to fill vacancies. The reimbursement proposal, I think, is far too generous. This candidate sought a job not in proximity to his current residence, and there was no prior understanding of reimbursement expectations. The district had not reimbursed Marty Brown or Rick Benson, who resided out of the area. The fire district just hired a general manager who lives out of the area without reimbursement for travel expense. We have no idea how long this will be going on. Our search for a general manager has taken far longer than any of us would have thought. Why are we doing this when we had another qualified candidate with relevant experience who's local and would be able to spend 2 to 3 or more days in the week in the office and was available without time constraints, such as a planned 3-week vacation? We have many critically time-consuming issues coming up, and the physical presence of our GM is vitally important. And I do think we should have, if the vote is for having him, I think there should be an absolute cap on all his travel expenses. That would include meals, rental car, going to the Portland airport, parking at the Portland airport, everything. There should be a known cap on all his expenses.
Sorry, can I? There is a cap though, yes?
The cap is for the items listed in 7B. He gets up to 300 for airfare, up to 150 for each week, and then he gets the per diem set by GSA, whether that's the Alameda County or the Contra Costa, depending on the board's pleasure. So it's not a total cap. Conceivably, GSA could raise their per diems, but it's an effective cap as long as those rates.
But we're not entertaining the possibility of reimbursing other expenses outside of related to his travel.
He has not asked for that. and
Okay,
I
so this
not
in
provide for
effect
them.
is a cap with the potential for, if for some reason the per diem was changed.
The per diem has an item for lodging and an item for meals and incidentals. The amount allocated for incidentals is something along the lines of $5, which I think we all know does not cover airport parking. So that's what he gets. So he will have to fund his own parking or transportation to the airport.
So this is an absolute cap. All other expenses is covered here.
This should cover all of the expenses that we're reimbursing him for, yes.
And I just would like to, if I can, comment on Mr. Aranda generally. Obviously, I was in the interviews, and my personal feeling is that while all the candidates were good, Mr. Aranda really stood out. And I think that the amount of money we're talking about here for expenses is worth it when you know you have the right person. And he's very qualified, very experienced. And I think at this critical juncture, when we know we have the right person, that's who we go for. And in the long run, that will save us money, time, and a lot of headache. So I'm really pleased. I hope that we vote tonight to hire him and that he accepts.
Thanks, Cass.
I agree that we should go ahead. We had a 4-1 vote in favor of Mr. Aranda. And he's a very strong candidate. I'm glad we have a cap on the expenses. This is only until we hire a permanent GM, and we are looking, and we have some potential candidates. Rather than hesitating and putting changes in the contract, I'd like to get him hired ASAP. I agree this is a generous travel reimbursement but we did nail him down to 2 days, boots on the ground here, which is what we need. So I do feel it's probably best to approve this and go ahead.
And Director Hussey.
Yeah, I would like to caution board members that what happens in closed session, in particular votes, are not discussed. And I also would also say that I'm not at all immune to the issues of our budget. And I would liken this, I think, to a couple of reasons why I still vote in. I would like to speak in favor of this contract and Mr. Aranda. Mr. Aranda was one of the first people I ever met when I became a board member. I attended a training that he did in San Jose with actually Director Natoli, and found that training to be excellent. And that was really my only impression of him. I believe he's very involved in CSDA, but I personally don't recall other presentations I've been to with him, but he's extremely experienced. I feel a little bit like this is the vote when we hired Chief Steve Simpkins, because it was a very big expense. It was the predominant reason that other board members at the time voted against it. It was nothing about the candidate. And in the end, I think we were happy that we did that. I think there's going to be the benefit of experience and efficiency, and experience being an interim GM, which is a very different position to be in, is important. My expectation and hope, and not hope, my expectation is he will really be able to do in some ways for the district as a whole what Chief Steve Simpkins was able to do for us with the police department, really come in. And also because he's got such deep experience with special districts, my hope is he'll be able to work collaboratively to help us find another permanent general manager as well. So I am sensitive to these issues, but I've done some of my own calculations, and given that he is limited by CalPERS to 960 hours, depending on the burn rate, if you will. I mean, it could be as little as 6 or 8, it could even be less, frankly, if he works more than 30 hours a week, which some weeks he's already agreed that he can do that and may do that. So knowing the workload, and Tony may back me up here, hewing to only 30 hours a week can be hard. And so his entire salary is capped with us. Ultimately, I believe it comes out to about $72,450 if you do 960 at the hourly rate. And the expenses, if my calculator is correct, would be at the most $2,700 and more or less $48 a month. And so if we go through a faster burn rate, it is a smaller time. And I think we should put the pedal to the metal on the permanent GM. And we do know that he has a 3-week vacation in June, which in some ways gives us an incentive to work harder and faster to make that transition happen. So I will speak in favor of this contract and of the candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would also like to add that David is an incredibly experienced general manager with special districts. From 2010 to 2014, he was the GM for the River Municipal Water District in Bakersfield. And prior to that, he was the general manager for 16 years with the Stallion Springs Community Services District, also near Bakersfield. And while he was the GM at Stallion Springs, he oversaw their police chief. So he has experience managing police chiefs and supporting community safety concerns. He also has experience with capital projects, with building projects. I think they had a very similar issue that we're facing with the permanent location of our police. And he's a widely respected expert on special districts. He's currently on the board of the California Special Services District Association. And I personally believe that his vast experience, especially with issues that Kensington is currently dealing with, is going to be a major asset to us. So I'm confident that we're going to be in good hands with him. And I think the expenses, while I do understand the concerns, I think it's worth it, and we need to move quickly. Director Hussey.
I believe he's actually on the board of the Special District Risk Management Agency, SDRMA. If that is the case, if I remember that correctly, is there any issue with conflict of interest for him?
There might be with respect to his duties for SDRMA, but I'd have to look at that. I don't know enough about their internal operations.
Okay, I'm not terribly concerned because it's not I don't see a huge conflict, but I would like to maybe have that discussed perhaps during his first, if this should proceed.
If there are any decisions to be made regarding SDRMA during his tenure, I think I would want to put in some sort of wall between him and those decisions.
That might be a good thing to double check on his background. And if that is the case, whatever entity he is on the board of, perhaps we could add that in.
Noted. Are there any questions or comments from the public, or we have someone here in the room? And then I see a hand a couple of hands in Zoom.
A. Stephen Still. On page 2 of the contract, under 5 terms, line 3, it states, manager shall report the number of worked in the prior and then current fiscal year. Number of what? Hours, days, leap years? I think you're missing something.
Thank you. Can we take one comment from Zoom? Mabry?
Yes, I'm unmuted now. When I saw that the gentleman was living in Oregon, my question to myself was, what is his experience and knowledge in California law and GM management in California? I'm glad to see somebody finally mentioned that he did have experience in that. It would have been nice to see a full CV of him, so we'd have more public information about the sort of candidate you're talking about. I'm sorry that you didn't include any of that. And then in the discussion, I'm a little confused because there was some comment about limits on the number of hours, and I don't know whether that was referred to with Tony's limits, or that this possible candidate has similar limits imposed upon him by CalPERS. Those are two of my questions about the candidate. And like I say, I'm really sorry that we weren't given more of a description of his qualifications, because that is certainly very important.
Thank you, Mabry.
That's it.
Can I?
Director Hassai?
Yeah, I apologize. We should have caught that there wasn't a resume in there, and I would like to know whether we could, I don't know, when we put the packet up again, or add it somehow online if this should pass, for example. Maybe he is extremely experienced in California. His circumstances of moving to Oregon are recent and personal, just to help out a family member. And the hours limits that we're talking about are related to CalPERS, because he was such a long time California employee. So they're the same restrictions that have been on Tony's time. So, and again, that is an oversight, and I apologize on our behalf.
Well, actually, I did inquire about that, and Tony, maybe you can share your perspective.
Thank you. That he will provide a brief summary of his background that will be posted on the website. And that's generally what we do. Unfortunately, we weren't able to complete that in time for the meeting, but that will be on the website in short order.
But thank you, Mabry, for the suggestion. And let's go back here to the room.
Hi, Lynn Wolter. I had the pleasure of taking several trainings from Dave Aranda during my years of involvement with the district. He was always well prepared. He spoke well. He has an enormous wealth of knowledge and experience. And on top of that, he's just a nice person. So I think you'll do well to have him here working with us, for us. And also, will he be attending the board meetings? That's part of his, okay, great, wonderful, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Lynn. Director Goff, did you have okay. Director Hussey?
Just one other thing. I noticed that page 3, item C says within 30 days of commencing employment, it should be interim general manager will submit or whatever goals and objectives for their tenure for approval by the board of directors. That would actually be the March 9th, would be potentially the March 9th meeting to the board for approval, or it would have to wait. He'd have to give them to us on March 13th, and then we wouldn't really quote unquote be able to improve them as a board until April. So I just raised that as something to discuss with him and to realize that it actually could be less than 30 days if, well, I guess it would be exactly 30 days, right? March 9th, but he's starting on the 13th. So the timing's a little off. I just noticed that.
So he actually begins on the 13th.
Yes, if this contract were to be approved, his official first day would be Monday, February 13th.
I'd like to move.
I think there's one more comment in Zoom. Sorry. Lynn?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm speaking as a Kensington resident, not as Outlook editor. I'm really dismayed by this process as it's gone forward. I can't imagine, the consultant that found Marty was contractually obligated to find someone else for free because she didn't stay for a year. And I don't understand why that was not utilized. I mean, it was no skin off anybody's back to see what they came up with. And it's nothing against Brent Ives, but if you have a free search, it seems incumbent upon the board to at least to use it. So now this Mr. Aranda lives in Portland, and he's going to be reimbursed over $600 per week to travel to Kensington. I mean, I cannot believe with all the tech and business layoffs that there aren't local managers or supervisors who could step in and function, even give a fresh take. And, I'm sure Mr. Aranda is a wonderful manager. I did look up a little bit about him. Stallion City has like 2,200 residents. So it's a very small community, even smaller than Kensington. And we are a small community and we're not made of money. And we're looking at unknown expenses in the coming year. And if the PSB doesn't work out, those expenses could be really substantial. And so I think the board really has to prioritize saving money. And there's nothing wrong with being frugal. And both these decisions to not use that consulting firm and to hire someone who lives in Portland who needs travel expenses are not frugal. That's all. Thanks.
Director Dugan.
I'd like to respond. Lynn, I definitely hear you. We did have some concerns about getting an interim while we are looking for a long-term. We are still using that other consulting firm who owes us a free candidate for the long-term person. And there are some candidates, out there that we have been looking at. But we need someone right now, and we need a problem solver. And I became convinced through interviewing 3 great candidates, that this guy is a real problem solver and loves doing it and is going to jump right in there. And we need help right now. Tony has got to go ASAP, and our board needs direction and purpose and energy. And this guy really was very impressive. Of course, we'll see what happens. But I was convinced that this was a good move to make because, once we find a regular, a real long-term GM candidate, which could happen ASAP, then we can let this person go, but we don't want to be with no one.
Director Hussey.
Just to piggyback on Director Duggan's comments, There are two parallel searches, and the search for Marty Brown was a search for a permanent GM. And so that is the obligation that CPHS still has for us. This is was a separate assignment. It was an interim GM, and those are different candidate pools. So just to put a finer point on it, perhaps.
Thank you. Lisa has her hand up.
Hi, yes, I do. I just wanted to point out one little technical aspect to this discussion, that the district office is actually closed on February 13th because it is a holiday for us. So there will be no district employees there until Tuesday. So is it possible to have Mr. Aranda start on that day?
Can you
So
clarify
Lisa,
what holiday it is?
The contract starts on the 13th, his official first day, but he actually won't be coming into the office until Tuesday, the 14th.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, Director Goff. I'm not sure if Mabry has another comment, or she still has her hand up, Linnell.
I did the question, and it's a quick question since I know I didn't use my 3 minutes. Is this an at-will contract? And it sounds like you think it is, and I would hope it is. So that's my question.
Yes.
Comment. Okay, that's it.
Okay, so unless there's any more comments or questions, do I hear a motion? Oh.
I know I'm not supposed to speak twice, but I just thought of something. I assume that travel time does not count to the hours he's working. Is that correct?
There's no provision for that in the contract, so no.
Well, shouldn't it be in there that I'm sorry, so the hours that he works are the times he's actually here doing work, or he's at home doing work, but it doesn't include the time he's going to the airport and flying and things like that. Is that clear in the contract?
You know, usually travel time is specified that you are counting travel, usually in contracts.
I spoke.
Okay. You can.
Anyway, so I don't know if we need to clarify that, but usually in a contract, it is specified when it is considered work time in my experience. So usually that would not be considered, but I don't know whether it needs to be specified.
I would say not. In every employment contract we've never specified that. The person has to get to the place of work on their own, whether that's here at the district offices or in their own computer at home.
That's how I interpret this contract. That's the intent, that travel time is not considered work, and it won't go towards his quota. Is there a motion?
Yes. I move that we contract with David Aranda to be our interim general manager.
May I ask for an amendment to the motion that you move that the board approve the contract?
Yes, please.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Linnell, can you do the roll call?
Director Duggan,
Yes.
Director Goff,
Yes.
Director Hassai,
Yes.
Director Natoli. Director Natoli
No.
and President Aquino Fight.
Yes.
A motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda are updates from the ad hoc board committees. As folks might remember, we established two ad hoc committees in our last board meeting. One was the Police Department and District Office Permanent Location Committee, and the other was the Preliminary Kensington Park Replanting Strategy Committee. I'll give an update from the Police Department and District Office Permanent Location Committee. And then Director Goff, you can supplement with anything that I've missed. So the KPPCSD, Police Department and District Office Permanent Location Ad Hoc Committee, I'm just going to call it the committee, and the KFPD Temporary Public Safety Building Committee have been meeting on a regular basis for a weekly basis for the past 4 weeks. Our KPPCSD committee has also been meeting at least once a week, often twice, with our police chief, Chief Gankas, since we were sworn in on December 8th, minus the holiday weeks in December. It's been a paramount priority for us to move more fully and deeply learn directly from our safety experts, starting with the police to understand their operations, challenges, and needs, with the shared goal of building a stronger, stable, and modern police department physically based in Kensington. A department that has come a long way thanks to the work of the past boards, Chief Gankas, and prior chiefs. We have a much stronger department than we did back many years ago, but in order to make it stronger, we know we must invest in providing them with the resources to retain high quality staff. And we fully understand that having modern and safe physical working spaces is critical to this. We also fully understand that the district has very limited resources in terms of a physical space, land, and limited capacity in terms of financing. We want to build a stronger district and department without jeopardizing the financial future of Kensington. And we understand that compromises are going to be necessary among all stakeholders. So we wish to report from these joint temporary committee meetings the following. We are identifying a shared understanding of what the terms of dual occupancy of the PSB might look like in order to be presented in the form of a recommendation to our full board. We can share that we will first present our analysis and recommendation to the full board, and assuming that the board votes to approve our recommendation, to pursue our recommendation, the next step would be to memorialize our intent and the potential terms in the appropriate form, possibly a letter of intent. Dual occupancy in some configuration is still very much on the table, and we're optimistic. It is the focus of the conversations right now. These are nuanced, complicated, and sensitive conversations with various stakeholders. And because of these stakeholders, we can't share the full details of all of the terms yet, but very soon. We're working tirelessly with our colleagues on the temporary fire board committee, and we anticipate providing more information to the board and the public shortly. Director Goff, do you want to add anything?
Nope, that was great. Summed it up. I would maybe thank our colleagues on the fire board who've been great to work with, and also interim GM Mary Moraga. And it's been a very enlightening and productive process so far, and I look forward to continuing.
Thank you. I guess at first I'd like to get an update from the replanting committee, and then we'll take questions and comments. Director Dugan.
So Vice President Sarah Goff and I are on the Kensington Park Replanting Strategy Committee. As you no doubt heard President Aquino Fike mention, the planned tree removal in Kensington Park is now scheduled for February 20 to 24th, while the Hilltop Elementary School is on recess, weather permitting. So far, Vice President Goff and I have met with Fire Chief Eric Sailors and representatives of Good Guest Kensington to get their recommendations for the park. Laura Callan of Good Guest is connecting us up with Indigenous partners in the Sogorea Te Land Trust, and she has referred us to UC Berkeley Landscape Design Department staff at Blake Gardens, who are working with those two Indigenous partner groups as well. And we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with Timothy Cole of Blake Gardens. I suggested to Sarah today that another partner that we add to the list that was already on our committee will be Hilltop School, the principal, and also staff. And you are all invited to a community meeting with Sarah and I on Monday, February 27th at 7 p.m. here in room 3 of the community center at 59 Arlington Avenue to give your input on the replanting of Kensington Park.
Thank you. Director Goff,
No, that was great. Thanks.
any questions from fellow board members or comments? Director Hasai?
Yes, I have two, well, one's a question, I think, to the ad hoc committee on the permanent location. What do you anticipate your timeline being for presenting recommendations?
Director Goff?
Yeah, we're hoping, obviously, there's no way to know for sure that some form of recommendation would happen in a matter of a few weeks, ideally. But no way of knowing for certain, but hoping to have something.
And so your intention is to present those to the full boards, each of you to your full boards, and perhaps by the next board meeting?
So we would our committee would present to this board, most likely in a special meeting, the full recommendation. And then there would be a pause of a few days to reflect and decide on a vote of whether or not to accept the recommendation.
So a special meeting in advance of a regular meeting?
Yeah, likely,
Okay.
again.
And then a vote at a regular meeting? Or
Possibly, but
Depends on the timing.
Yeah.
There's going to be a pause for the community to digest a recommendation, the board to reflect. No action will be taken after the recommendation, and then the next step.
I'm not done yet. Sorry.
Mhm.
I would also like to just provide some recommendations that I heard from some community members about the replanting plan. This person is a landscape architect, and they may have said more than this, but the one thing that has stuck with me is that they thought about a mix of both deciduous and evergreen trees in that area, or shrubs, plants, whatever would be a good idea. And I will mention this meeting to them, and if this is a public community meeting, how can board members participate in an active way? Does it have to be, can I speak up at this community meeting, Anne? The meeting on the 27th for the replanting, if it's held by the ad hoc committee, as a board member, I could attend, but I should not speak.
If it's an open meeting open to the public, all who wish to come, and you are speaking as a private citizen, and you do not confer with other board members or go off and discuss board business with other board members, then yes, you may.
The board members will be potentially leading the meeting.
Yes.
That's okay, though.
You can talk to them in public. There's an
Okay.
exception for that. You simply can't talk to them in any setting that would be considered just the three of you.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions or comments, Director Dugan?
I just wanted to ask, once you notice the special meeting, it'll be an open meeting. So anyone who's concerned about this issue, a special meeting requires 24 hours notice.
Mhm.
So keep your eye on the website, or could we invite the public to email us if they want an email sent to them noticing them about this special meeting?
All members of the public can sign up for all notices from the district on our website.
So they would get that one as well.
They would get
not
that.
just the regular meeting.
Right. It would be great if we had more than a day's notice. I mean, it's a special meeting, but having a much bigger timeline would.
Excuse me, I should say that as an ad hoc committee meeting, it does not require notice under the Brown Act, but I think advertising it perhaps on the website might help.
I think we're talking about two different things.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the earlier question, I think from Director Hasai, was regarding the committee for the replanting, our community meeting, which is
Mhm.
not going to be recorded, but everyone's welcome to. And then separately, the meeting for the permanent location to
okay.
present the
I
concept.
went back. to-
And that would be,
Okay.
that may be in a regular meeting, it could be special, but we're hoping that it happens imminently. It's going to depend on the calendar and how much more progress we make. We're getting, it's progressing and we're feeling positive, but there's a lot of uncertainty. So just stay tuned and we'll keep you informed.
Director Hasai?
Sorry, one more question. Is when you present at this upcoming meeting with a sort of a plan or a recommendation, will it have been informed by an architect?
Director Go.
I think the recommendation is going to be based on concepts and terms. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Yes. But it will be sufficient information to make a decision about whether or not to proceed with a intent to pursue joint occupancy under these terms but we're going for principles and.
Got it. Thank you.
And I would just add that any recommendation we make, it will be very clear. It is not our intention to delay the process, of providing a safe, modern building for our fire employees, so our fire staff.
Can I make?
Okay, Director Duggan.
I would like to thank Directors Goff and Aquino Fike for taking on this very difficult choice for the sake of the community. And I want to state the obvious, which is that there is no perfect answer that's going to make everyone happy. And we are lucky to simply have these two people ready to go ahead, bite the bullet and do it. And I thank them for it.
Thank you. Yes, it has been a lot of work. I'm neglecting my regular job and as you warned me, Sylvia, and my family, but I am really, I am optimistic. And I also want to thank again, our colleagues on the fire board, Julie and Jim. I do see a hand, Zoom. Trying to, Lynn.
Yeah. Now I am speaking as the Outlook editor. I didn't get the time for this meeting on Monday, February 27th.
At 7 p.m.
Oh, 7 p.m. Okay. And also it would be great if this special meeting about the PSB could be set in time to be announced in the Outlook.
Noted. Thank you.
I think our intent and hope is to obviously get as much community participation at this meeting as possible. This is very important and we're very sensitive to that, and also all of the other time constraints that are applicable. Thank you.
Let me also make a recommendation to the ad hoc committee that they consider engaging a professional facilitator potentially. We've done that before. We actually did use Bill Lindsay before. Somebody who can just handle the meeting so that you can participate fully. I would recommend that.
Thank you. That's a great idea. Any other questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, seeing none. I think we can move on. The next item on the agenda is an update on the KCC contract. Not sure if, okay.
I can do
Dr.
it, yes.
Director Hassai.
I want to thank my mates in this endeavor, Kathy Garza and Ann Forrest. The KCC, they're the KCC's negotiating team. They provided a response to us on February 3rd. We've had a couple of emails back and forth, but we haven't been able to sit down and really hammer something out. They would like us to come to an agreement before they bring it before their full board. Their full board meets on the 13th. So if Danforth and I can present something and discuss it with them before Monday's meeting, it's possible, but we're not sure. Everyone's working, they're shaking their heads, probably not, who knows? So there's a couple of options here. One is that both boards can meet in a special meeting. I mean, for us, it's a more rigorous, specialized by or specified by law, but their board could also potentially meet in a special session outside their regular meeting routine. And we could come to an agreement in time before the deadline of the 28th. If we aren't able to do that, we could meet in a special meeting. And since there is well, the ad hoc meeting is not a special meeting, but we could create a quick special meeting before the ad hoc meeting. We could actually extend it from the 28th if that's necessary. We could potentially ride between the 28th and the 9th. I don't know if Anne would let that happen, but I don't know. But we can still work to the 28th deadline, but I have a feeling it's going to end up getting pushed again. And we will have to come up with the best way to do that. So the areas of sort of back and forth continue to diminish. There are probably a handful at this point, and I still feel confident all this is going to be worked out, and it just takes a lot longer because of work schedules and Anne's schedule. Everyone's schedule is difficult to manage. So I ask for your continued patience, and again, we are working well.
Thank you, Director Hazai. Any questions or comments from the board or from the public? Okay, I've gotten a request for a quick bio break.
If I could interrupt, I believe the agenda item. No, it doesn't. Never mind.
No worries. Someone guide me here. If we want to take a bio break. What do we do?
I guess we recess for a few minutes. Is that correct, Anne? If we need a quick break?
Of course, you could just declare a recess.
Okay. All right, so we will take a 5-minute break for
The fuck is this? I have no idea.
Next item on our agenda is, I guess, an update on the proposed joint KPPCSD KFPD meeting with Contra Costa Lasco.
Yes. So I've had a conversation with Ms. Teixeira, and she's quite happy to come and present to both of our boards and to the community. And we were hoping that we might be able to schedule it for this month before the state of emergency was lifted, so that it could be 100% remote, given some of the technical issues we've been having with hybrid, but hybrid's actually been working quite nice tonight, I think. Please let us know otherwise if from home you're having trouble. But in any case, with February being a short month and Ms. Teixeira's schedule and the meetings we have and potentially expect to have, February didn't work out. So we're entertaining now 3 potential dates, 1 at the end of March and 2 at the end of April. And so we're pulling board members to see who can come when. And we'll go with a date where we have quorum and the most board members able to participate in person. And I think with 10 board members, scheduling, and Ms. Teixeira's schedule is quite full as well. This is just the way it's going to be, but I'm very hopeful we'll settle on those dates in the next couple days. And it will be a hybrid meeting. And Ms. Teixeira's happy to come in person, but will likely be remote if due to some other factors. And her presentation as to the format, aside from being hybrid, it should be around a 20-minute presentation from Ms. Teixeira, and then at least about an hour for question and answers from the community and the board. And again, this is purely informational. No decisions will be made at this meeting. This is just to educate the public and hopefully get to some finer points that I know those in the community who have much more expertise on the topic will probably want answers to as well. So I've had multiple meetings and exchanges, or I should say exchanges and a meeting with my counterparts on the fire board, and everything is sounding great. And I think we're gonna learn a lot, and I'm looking forward to it. And again, that confirmation, I think we could potentially, when that date is finalized, put it on our website ASAP. And of course, that will be after the date's cleared with the fire board side as well. And still very much looking forward to that. Thank you.
Great.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I wanted to add one other thing, that obviously there'll be plenty of opportunity to ask questions in this joint meeting, but if any members of the community would like to submit their questions in advance, they can submit it to me at my kppcsd.org email, and that's sgolf@kppcsd.org. And I can entertain those from Ms. Teixeira. And obviously, of course, you're all free to ask questions in person as well. But that might be helpful. And I welcome that information from you. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Director Goff. Any questions or comments from the board?
Clarification, is it going to be in person or on Zoom?
So because it'll be after February 28th, all board members who participate have to be in person. But we always want to offer the hybrid option for the community, just so that we get maximum participation. So board members who participate, and boards voted to participate, provided they can be present at the meeting, need to be physically present. And there are some exceptions once the state of emergency is lifted for remote participation by board members, but that would depend on a case-by-case basis. But we will be here. The community can be remote or in person, and Ms. Teixeira is willing to do either, but prefers to be remote, so she has access to her files and whatnot. And yes. Did that answer your question?
Great. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, hearing none. Let's go on to the next item. Options to improve community engagement at meetings. We've had several suggestions from community members for improving the format, the tech quality. We know the sound was an issue last time. Hopefully this time it's better. Also, how we might receive input and letters from the community. I've asked Director Dugan to kind of lead this conversation, and I'd love to hear more from the board about if there's room to improve.
Okay. I happen to be a big advocate of democracy and have worked with, mentally ill, physically ill, have a disabled daughter. And so I have a major interest in improving community engagement from all. So there are many ways in which we have improved already and other ways in which we can improve, and we want your input. I've gotten some great input from several citizens, including Merrill Rafferty, and I got a great article from Sylvia. Thank you, Sylvia. And here are some ideas, and any of them that you like, you can talk up now, you can write us, you can speak up in the next meeting, but just getting the dialogue going. So we're planning to have permanent hybrid meetings. That's great. That includes everyone possible. We're working out the kinks. We now have the speaker at the podium visible and audible to Zoom and to the in-room audience. One thing I think the KFPD has recently done, which they actually kind of did by accident the first time, they switched from a Zoom webinar to Zoom meetings, and then Zoom participants were able to see each other, and their Zoom name was displayed to the live audience, the other people on Zoom. And I think that is far preferable than having people who are at home hidden. I think this screen should actually be used to display the audience at home. We could ask people to turn their cameras off if it's distracting, or we could actually have it on just like in classes on Zoom. We could have people use a pseudonym if they desire to be anonymous. When they make a public comment, they can choose to have their image displayed if they want to, or they can choose not to. And I just think, the more we know who's participating, everybody wants to be seen, wants to be heard, and, that will increase our feeling of engagement. I'd also like to get more people to live meetings. I'm thinking it might be good for parents to provide childcare here. I'd like to hear from the community if you like that idea. Starting meetings earlier might be a way to help parents. I'm also thinking it might be great to put the interesting and important things first in the meetings. Maybe we could aim for the first hour to be the part the public wants and needs to engage in, and the controversial items. We could put the consent calendar last. I know when I was tuning in from home, that consent calendar was confusing and boring. And why did they need to hear that at all? That could be last. We could also make closed sessions the later part of the evening. I know it's not fun for board, but I know we're afraid we'll be here forever, but let's get the people engaged. Let's get the people coming here. We could have the police report earlier. I know one guy who would love that, which is Chief Gankas. And it would be more exciting. It'd be more interesting. Okay, onward. I believe that letters that citizens write in for public comment should once again be read out loud by a board member during public comment time. Apparently, we changed our KPPCSD changed its policy to exclude the reading of letters some time ago, and I believe we should vote to change it back. We want to hear from everyone, and we want to make it easy for all to give feedback, including anyone with disabilities or barriers to speaking. And that's a normal policy for boards. The fire board does that. When I wrote letters to the fire board, they read them. There's Larry. Thank you, Larry. So I'd like to entertain that conversation. We can have community listening meetings more often. If the public feels we need that, please call for that. We're having one on the 27th in that room about the replanting. But if you feel there's a need for more meetings, please tell us. Links for agendas are on the homepage of the website. That's actually a Brown Act requirement. The Zoom link is on that agenda. I'd like to see the Zoom link right on the homepage. That was suggested by Laura Chick. And our email addresses are on the website. Please use them. Please write us. We new directors want to get to know you. So please always introduce yourself at the podium and when on Zoom so that we all get to know each other's names. To make meetings peaceful and polite, we won't talk until called on by President Aquino Fike, and we ask everyone to do the same. Please do try to get the agenda and talk on the topic that we're talking on during public comments for that item. But if you don't know the rules, I believe it's the director's job to help you get your voice heard. I'm having office hours once a month. It's posted on Nextdoor, or feel free to email me and I'll email you and tell you when I'm having them. Feel free to drop in and give suggestions for better government. Please tell your friends that meetings are recorded and they can watch them later. That's one way to engage. And a suggestion for Merrill Rafferty: when there's a controversial topic, the chair can ask for a show of hands in the room or for people to appoint a speaker for their group. People don't all need to say the same thing over and over for their opinion to be heard. Feel free to show the board via thumbs up, or, we could even institute a new age, jazz hands if you like what somebody is saying, to show us. Anyway, these are just my little various ideas, and what do other people think?
Thank you for filing this list of ideas. I guess I'd love to hear from Director Natoli about past practices. What have you learned? What's worked?
Something is happening to the sound where whoever is speaking cannot be heard.
Oh, sorry, I had myself on mute. I was saying, I'd love to hear from you, Director Natoli and Director Hasai, about past practices for involving the community and what's worked, what hasn't.
I'm not sure where to start. I mean, there's just a lot of suggestions there. I believe that we have tried in the past, and Lynn Walters here, she might have more history than I do, certainly has more history than I do. Maybe not at board meetings, but they've tried to offer childcare at community meetings, and KCC in fact did that. There are liability issues. I don't believe that childcare is the reason most parents, I can't speak for all parents, but I don't believe childcare is the issue. Most parents would, if there's a 2-family house, they would send one person and the other person would stay home with the kids most likely. I think it's complicated. I'm not saying we couldn't explore it. I think we should wait for our next general manager and kind of talk through some of these ideas there. The issue with what else? I don't know. I'd have to really look at your comments again and kind of go through them, but I think we should just keep having this conversation and talk to people. Some of your suggestions are probably pretty easy to implement. That is to some extent a staff function to sort of put out maybe some ideas. I mean, we can of course demand certain things, but it's good to collaborate with the staff about what's possible. For example, perhaps the change from webinar to hybrid to sort of this meeting thing. But there may be issues, I don't know, reasons why we shouldn't do that we may not have thought of. I mean, there are examples of Zoom bombing, and, I don't know whether it's okay to put a fake name up as opposed to staying anonymous, or, all these things. I don't know, have answers for all of them, to be honest.
And could you comment on the letter practice?
Yeah, it's just, usually it's a member of the public reading a letter into the record, and we get sometimes hundreds of letters. And maybe you can comment. There was something you told me once about if you open up your packet to any letter that comes in, then the neo-Nazis could write a letter and you have to put it in. It's something like that. Is that what you told me?
I think that Director Duggan was talking. Duggan. was talking about comments that people have on agenda matters, and they ask a neighbor or a board member to read it if they cannot themselves be present to give that comment. Do I have that right?
Well, for example, the fire board has a actual email address for public comments, and anything they receive, they read out loud.
Every single piece of correspondence about any topic whatsoever?
I don't know. I mean,
You-
it seems to me that it was a practice of the fire boards and of many boards that if you receive a public comment, that, you know, that person gets their 3 minutes. If the letter's too long, it gets abridged. But, you know,
I don't think that's a
if it
practice.
were
I don't think every board does. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a practice among all boards. There's plenty of school boards where if you don't sign up to that sheet and you don't get your 2 minutes and that's it. I mean,
And I'd just like to say that, you know, the purview of the boards are different. We're covering a lot of different things. Fire's more limited and therefore conceivably maybe getting fewer correspondence. But also that might work, I wonder, against our efforts to engage the public, because if we're talking about keeping meetings shorter and more efficient so people want to come, if we are reading, you know, if there's no constraint on that, I personally welcome any member of the public to come or have someone come and read their letter and delegate that person. That seems to be a way to have a more reasonable exchange and constraint.
May I come back to the issue that Director Hasai was raising? The public comment period on the agenda is what's called a public forum. Anyone can come up and talk about anything so long as it's about a matter that's within the district's purview. So it's a limited public forum, but it is a public forum. And people can say anything they want. And sometimes they do. And sometimes those things are offensive. And I think you do want to curate what you put on the record out loud. I mean, what happens in public comment is going to be in the minutes, but I'm not sure that you want to spend a great deal of time reading aloud the views of people with whom you may or may not agree and whose views may be offensive. And you can't not read something. If you've opened the door to any comment from anyone, then you can't decline to read something simply because you find it offensive. And so that's why, generally speaking, local agencies, in my experience, are careful to limit what sorts of information they're willing to share. If it relates to a matter on the agenda, then it goes in the packet. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I would say the same principle would apply to letters that we receive that the board may want to consider how broadly to broadcast them.
right, when the board met, when we get letters sent to us, from the members of the public, the board has received them. We have received their thoughts, their comments, we have them. So if they want to come to make public comment, they're really not, if they have already written to us, they're not really speaking to us, they want to make a public comment because they want it to be public. But that either means someone comes or they get someone else to do it on their behalf. And that's my opinion, so.
I do recognize, accessibility issues with that, rule. So what I'd like to do is continue to explore this with the next interim GM. I want to make it a priority so that we really are considering all creative options. There's got to be creative options out there. But let's hear from the public. We have somebody, Larry.
Yes, Larry Nagel, former president of the Kensington Fire Protection District. I'd like to just address this issue. Anybody can come to the meeting and make a public comment at this microphone. Unfortunately, some people come and make very offensive comments, and they're asked to please keep it clean or whatever. But we do get some public comments at both board meetings that are offensive. I won't go into details. The reason that we allow letters to be read at the meeting is simply that there are some people that cannot make it to a public meeting. And the feeling is that by reading the letter, we're just making the public comment for them. All of the same restrictions go for letters that are read in, quote, read into the record, whatever that means, just read at the meeting. If the letter's offensive, we won't read it. If the letter is completely off base and talking about how we should support putting the Oakland A's in the or whatever, then we won't read it. But if the letter is an honest to goodness public comment that the person just can't make in person, then yes, my opinion was that we should have the letters read. And there was one meeting I remember where we had to read 27 letters into the public record because those people, for one reason or another, couldn't come. That was in addition to all the public comments. But I think, yes, you need flexibility, and just you have to be able to deal with public comments that aren't acceptable in either case. And I don't really see that much difference. When you get a letter, you know ahead of time exactly what the letter is going to say, so you can make a decision. When somebody just stands up and starts talking, you don't know what they're going to say, so it makes it's even actually more difficult. In some sense, I guess I'd prefer having all the letters written so that we could screen them ahead of time. And if you get 7 letters that are saying exactly the same thing, then it really only makes sense to read it once. So that's addressing what we've been doing in the fire district.
Thank you. Thanks. Ann,
I'm sorry, you can't pick and choose. You can limit it, you can limit the public comment period to matters within the district's jurisdiction. But you cannot then decline to read some letters because they're offensive or because they're redundant. You either have to be completely content neutral or just not do it. I also want to say something that I think most people aren't really aware of. People talk about reading their comments into the record, but in the context of the public comment period, those comments carry really no weight. It's simply a matter of informing, no legal weight. They're informing the board of directors on what's on the person's mind, but they have no bearing or effect beyond that. There's not a record that you're making for some particular purpose. And that same goal is achieved if you simply email directly to each director. It's the same thing as far as the effect goes. There's no effect otherwise of having your letter read and noted in the minutes.
thank you. I think though that many community members want the rest of the community to hear their opinion or their perspective. And so we're trying to figure out ways to share those in our meetings. But you are correct. Thank you for reminding us that we can't pick and choose content. And Director Hassai.
I would say that if their goal is to spread their message to the public, there are many ways to do that. And they can be here or be on home and give their comment. They can put it on next door. They can tack it up on a pole. So, the fact that they want their message to the public is different than getting their message to us. I think that's something to bear in mind.
Right, but I'm speaking about folks with disabilities who really physically cannot be here, or, elderly folks, and maybe they don't have someone who can come in their place. And so we need to be sensitive to those restraints.
Again, if their goal is to get their letter to us, that they've done that. And then that could be, I don't know, Ann, if there's a way to, you said we can't pick and choose. So are there particular circumstances in which we're not going to be able to really check, but we say, okay, if you have a disability, whatever. I mean, now we have hybrid meetings, and so you don't have to turn on your camera. You can there still may be other reasons why, and perhaps that would also be the role of, I also think that the clerk could read the letter, for example, which I believe you had done, but I don't know whether we can create under what circumstances we allow that.
I think that picking and choosing based on the speaker is also going to be problematic, although I have to admit I haven't researched that. It's fine to have the clerk read 1 or 2 letters, but 27 letters would take up a considerable chunk of time. So I think the board should also be mindful of that. And as you say, they can attend remotely, or they can simply send a letter to the each director individually, and the message will get through.
I'd like to, okay, we have some folks waiting on Zoom patiently, so, oh, sorry, Director Goff.
Well, I'd like to say that one sort of highlight to the public comment period generally is the opportunity to flag an issue, not only for the board, but the public at the same time. And it's the full effect that then gets an issue on the radar, and it pressures the board to pay attention, and that's a good thing. I do think, obviously, we will be confined by the law, but I think we all hear each other, and we all very much want to accommodate. I do think that the hybrid meeting addresses a lot of this. I personally would also like to see us utilize our email distribution list a lot more and engage that way from our end, sharing information, newsletters, updates. I know we used to do it. I know that there are reasons why we, it all takes time and effort, but I would like us to engage that way more regularly and explore that.
Thank you. Director Duggan? You have one more.
Okay, I don't want to upstage the people who may want to speak from home though.
Okay, so,
I do have one more.
okay, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I'll go ahead, sorry. So we 3 new directors got voted in on a platform of listening to the community and engaging the community. And clearly the voters really did want to change, because we really did get a lot of votes for that platform. And I'm concerned that there were people in the community who were not feeling heard and who were angry, and we want to give them a voice. I feel we need to err on the side of democracy. I say, thank you, Larry Nagel. I say, thank you, Fire Board, for being democratic and allowing anyone. And yes, I've been to Fire Board meetings where there were some really harsh and inappropriate comments. However, that's democracy. And, as Sarah said, maybe something then is placed on the radar of that board and that community that needed noticing. So I would actually like to suggest that we try a trial period of reading letters out loud. It could certainly be Linnell who reads them. It could be a board member, and offering that as an option. And I would like to point out the recent example of Mr. Mark Costantini, who had asked someone to read his letter, but it did not get read. And that letter had been received by the board members. And because there was a rule in place, I could not read that letter this time myself for him. And that to me just did not feel right. I would like there to be a policy that someone can, someone from the board can read a letter for someone. And perhaps we can have guidelines that exclude letters that have offensive language, curse words, hate speech. No, that's not.
Well, it's very difficult to draw those lines in a way that's constitutionally permissible.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from.
Okay,
the
yeah.
public. Thanks. And then, but I do think these are really great ideas, and I appreciate you researching them and bringing them to our attention. I think I agree with you. We have room to improve accessibility and transparency. Can we go to the Zoom participants? I think Mabry first had her hand up,
Lisa Corona.
and also Lisa, yeah, but first Mabry.
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
About reading letters, and I must say I was just feeling a little lazy tonight and coming, and I'm sorry that Unfortunately, Zoom makes it too easy for people not to come to the meeting, and I do think it's important for us to physically be there. And I did try the last two meetings, but tonight I just wasn't up to making it. But my comment is, if you think you're going to read all sorts of letters, and some of those letters get really rather wordy and long, that it is unfair to those of us who are there and limited to 3 minutes, that their letter can go on, I'll just say ad infinitum. You could post letters, people could send in letters, and there could just be a section on the website that says letters from the public, and we can all read them and scan them much quicker than we have to sit and listen to them. And you could too, that's an option, but some of these meetings drag on a terribly long time, and to have to spend a long time at listening to letters and repetitive letters, that's just not fun to listen to. Thank you.
Thanks, Mabry. Lisa?
Yes, hi, thank you. I want to echo what Mabry said in many respects. I think reading letters can be extremely problematic. I think individual directors can refer to somebody who contacted them and a point that they made and will bring it up in their director's comments. I do think when people go to the trouble of writing a letter, and a lot of these have good research or good thoughts behind them, that having a place for them as part of the agenda, letters from the public or by subject, I think is really valuable, because then other people get to see those ideas. I mean, I've written letters in the past to all board members and the general manager, and you never know if anybody's read them. You know, you never hear anything about them. At least this way, the public gets to understand your perspective, you know, even if you don't have the opportunity to speak at the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Sylvia? Sylvia E.
Hi.
Hi, Sylvia.
Hey, so until about 8 years ago or so, letters were added to the agenda packet at the request of the letter writer. Like Lynn Walter used to even email people and be like, do you want your letter published in the agenda packet or not? Like when it was sent to the board. And, you know, she always had a copy, I guess, because she was the clerk, whatever. So the good thing about that is that to Lisa Corona's point, the letter doesn't disappear into the ether, and that the letter writer doesn't know if they were ever heard or not. But you don't have to read the letters, just publish them in the agenda packet. That was practiced for many years. So if that's not legal, I'd be really surprised. And I think a lot of people really appreciated that, and I would like to see us return to that practice. Thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. That was also a suggestion from a community member. Apparently other special districts include them in their packets, but unless there's more comments, I think this is really something that our next interim GM should look into and make some recommendations to us. And certainly certainly Director Dugan, you should take a good look at this wonderful list that you've put together. So I think we've heard a lot, and it's
I just can't help it. I just want to thank you so much for your help. I'm not going.
Okay. Moving on. Moving on to director comments. I'll keep this short and sweet. But this has been a really important meeting with some critical changes. Our current interim general manager, Tony Constanturas, who's been with us since May this year, in his second stint with the KPPCSD. He's stepping down. This is his last meeting with our board, and we've now approved the contract with our next interim. Tony, I really want to personally thank you for your guidance, your grace, patience, and your real kindness to me and the other new directors. You've made our transition really easy and it's been a very busy and challenging time for all of us. And your experience has been a real asset to me personally, and I'm sure for the others. I know you're eager to spend more time with your family, with your wife, and you've truly earned it after the past 6 months. So thank you. And we have a little something for you from the board and for your wife.
Tony's wife has had to put up with lots of late nights and weekend work. And so that is for you to be a great husband and to show our appreciation as well. And we've got something for you here as well, including a gift certificate to Elson Restaurant and Bar in Danville. I don't know if you know it, but it looks lovely. And you and your wife can go enjoy a lovely dinner. And you will get that in your email box at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And this is from all current directors as well as the immediate past board. I know Mike came today. He might want to say a few words if we can have some comments, but thank you.
And Tony, I'd like to thank you for all your help that you've given us throughout the years, not only in this recent reoccurrence, but in your earlier time here, where you were our first professional general manager, and you were invaluable. Thank you very much, Tony.
Hi, I'm Mike Logan for everyone out there, but Tony, I want to thank you on your second round on the board. I mean, in the district. I'm happy to say that, coincided with my time on the board. So I'm really glad that actually you and I got to work together and I got to know you better. And I think I always took the attitude that I would, if I had a question, I wouldn't try to search around the district to find the answer. I would just basically, I would call you and let you answer it. So it made it easy for me. And if that, and you can thank Marty Brown for that, because she told me that's the way I should do it. So I said, okay, fine. If I have a question, I'll just call the general manager. But you always responded immediately and answered my question. And whether you had to do this, we did it through emails or just, we just had a quick phone call, whatever, we always, things were figured out at the time. And I really thank you. It was really been a pleasure working with you. I received a text tonight also from former director Rochelle Sherris-Watt, who apologized for not being able to make it here tonight, but she wanted me to also express to you her gratitude for the time that you put here on the board and her time working with you on the board. So again, thank you very much, Tony.
Any other director comments? Director Goff?
I said my goodbye prematurely last meeting. So I'll just second that. And thank you for making this a smooth transition, and hope that you get to enjoy a real retirement now. And thank you.
Likewise.
Director Goff, say.
Thank you. Again, just reiterating the thanks for the board, for myself, for the citizens of Kensington, which you have so ably served. And also passing along thanks from former Director Deppie, who also couldn't make it tonight. And we know that we've got a friend in you for a long time, and we're very happy. So, and you have a friend in Kensington. Thank you. Lots of friends in Kensington.
Great. Tony, your last general manager report.
Well, the general manager position works in partnership with the board and directs all the district staff. And this is a time where it's difficult to be an elected official. It's particularly challenging because there are complex issues that elected officials face, and there are limited resources and competing interests in the community. There's different perspectives and people disagree in perspectives. I recall the reading a quote from George Washington where he said, "I have no other view than to promote the public good." And I think that's what is reflected on how the board works here in Kensington. The board has set a standard in promoting public good and accomplishments. And we've had a history of really having outstanding board members. I wanted to recognize the people I've worked with over the last 3.5 years. Well, actually the 3.5 years that I've served as general manager. My first stint was about 3 years and this one was 9 months. First of all, Rochelle Sherris-Watt, who was the board chairman when I first came to Kensington for 2 years, and I worked with Rochelle for 2 years. I found Rochelle to be available to all the stakeholders in the community, and she was exceptionally talented in building a consensus among disparate opinions. And she was particularly an excellent meeting manager in running board meetings. Next, I wanted to note Mike Logan, who was here tonight. I knew Mike on the board for about 7 months, although I knew Mike before he was a board member also previously. I think Mike Logan is one of those people who are underappreciated. He works quietly. He doesn't get a lot of attention, and people don't understand the tremendous effect he has. He treats everyone as equally important, and he's very courteous to everybody. And I think that Mike deserves some special recognition, even though he's not a person that seeks it. Chris Deppe, to me, is accomplishment driven. That was what he was interested in. He didn't shy away from making difficult decisions. And one of the things I respect about Chris is that he had the courage to speak his opinion, no matter what it was, for the greater good. And he set high standards, and even when we disagreed, we ended up with a better decision because of Chris's input. Now, Eileen Natoli, who's up here on the TV screen, Eileen is also someone who's underappreciated, I think, because she's very modest. She doesn't seek credit. And she's done many things for the community that I'm not sure the community is even aware of it. And I'm only going to mention one, and that's the Policy and Procedures Manual, which when we started was one of the most disorganized and out-of-date manuals that I've ever seen. And it took years to do it. There were a lot of people involved, but Eileen was meticulous in getting it done every section, every time we would meet so often. And that was a great accomplishment. And there's a Policy and Procedures Manual on the website. So let's see, who else did I forget here? Oh, Sylvia Hasai. Can I say anything nice about Sylvia? Well, Sylvia is someone with principled leadership. She has very high performance standards. She's a high achiever, and she should consider running for higher office. I think she would be an excellent candidate at the State House or even in Congress if you want to deal with Congress. I wanted to mention one other board member that I worked with when I first came to the district, and that was Len Welsh. I worked with him for 1 year. I found Len to be a peacekeeper and to be a fair person. And I think those are qualities that were very, very helpful and still are helpful in the community. For the current board, I haven't worked with the current board a long time, but I can tell you that President Aquino Fike, Vice President Goff, and Cass are very impressive people. And I can assure the community that The future of Kensington is in very good hands. The community has elected committed, talented, and visionary leaders. And I think you'll see the results of this over time. Just be patient, give them enough time to learn everything. And we're already making some improvements here with these meetings, but I don't think the community will be disappointed with these new members on the board. We also have a committed, very dedicated police department and staff that are committed to the community. I do want to also recognize Ann Danforth. And the only thing I can say about Ann is that I've worked with quite a few general counsels, mostly city attorneys, and Ann is the perfect general counsel. So whatever you do, board, you've got to keep this general counsel. Don't lose her. She's a real asset. The more you work with her, the more you'll appreciate her. I want to say that one of the things that's important about local government that sometimes we forget is that local government is the closest to the people, and it's the most efficient part of government. The further you get away from the people, the further you get into larger organizations, the less effective those parts of government are. So even though we have our problems and disagreements, this local government is really something to be proud of. I wanted to recognize some people who could not be here. My wife, Becky, and my children, Jason and Alexis, who really helped me a lot. I learned from my children, and my wife is a large support system. And probably I would not have been here if it wasn't for Becky's support. So we're not a perfect local government, but we are a caring and committed, a government committed to achievement. I was remembering the words that Graham Nash wrote for David Crosby. You must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. So I leave Kensington humbled by friendships that would not have been possible, respectful of those that gave support in difficult times, and honored by the many that have influenced my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. Well, this is not goodbye. We will be in touch, I'm sure, and it's pretty incredible. It's unbelievable. This is really your, well, tomorrow, I guess, is really your last day. We're almost done, folks. We've got just, I think, one or two more items. Next, we've got an update from Chief Gancax. I think I see you there.
Yes, am I on? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I have no idea how I'm going to follow up that.
Yeah, sorry, we should have.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to be really short here. Good evening, members of the board, General Manager Constantoris and the community. This is the January monthly report for your Kensington Police Department. Just in general, we had no on-duty injuries, collisions, or complaints this month. We did receive 3 compliments and had no COVID exposures. We captured 1,019 incidents in our records management system and received 177 calls for service from the public. We took 28 crime reports, issued about 35 citations, and made about 30 traffic stops. Response times for officers are consistent with the times in December. Staffing levels did drop from 7 to 6 on January 15 due to scheduled and unscheduled absences. The good news is we welcomed police applicant David Payne to the team today. He was at the police department collecting his gear and getting to know the staff. David comes from the Concord Police Department, and was recruited by our police consultant, Jason Haynes, which we are very happy about. We look forward to him being a part of our future. And we also have 2 more applicants in the background phase of the hiring process and are optimistic we will be fully staffed by mid-March. We received an incident-based reporting certificate of compliance from the Department of Justice. This achievement would not have been realized if not for the attention to detail from staff and Sergeant Knapp, who was in charge of the program. We stepped up our social media awareness messaging to include tips on how to avoid becoming a victim of online theft. We did see a rise in that this month. Going forward, officers are going to be delivering informational flyers to members of the community when appropriate about this type of online scam theft, especially during the tax season. Members of the community can also pick up these useful tips, which are at the police department in the lobby free of charge. Also, any member of the community can come and call and ask for an officer's assistance. If they need help with this type of issue, they'll come right to your home. For training, Sergeant Landy attended a post-approved 40-hour field training supervisor course and was appointed the supervisor of the Kensington Police Training Program. Sergeant Knapp attended session 2 of the post-approved Supervisory Leadership Institute, and I attended the annual Contra Costa County Police Chiefs Conference in Napa. The entire January monthly report has been posted, and I'd be happy to answer any questions board members or the community may have.
Thank you, Chief Kankas, and congrats on getting your new hire today. Exciting news about staffing up.
Thank you.
We've got some questions or comments from board members. We'll start there. Director Spy.
Just a question, some of that information around sort of online scams, is that being distributed, for example, to the library? Or are there public places that you can leave it in addition to handing to community members, who may need it?
We sure can. Absolutely, we can do that. There's an awful lot of information online about this as well. And in the monthly report, there is a link that you can access just pages and pages of information about that type of fraud.
And I would also just recommend to the community, if you're watching and if you have elderly parents, there's a gentleman named Mark Rober, who is a very entertaining engineer in Silicon Valley who got really involved in this issue and has created a really interesting and in a way fun to show how he helped track down some of these folks who scam older folks out of lots and lots of cash. So if you're looking for something to do with an older relative and look at that, it really explained well how these scams work. Just passing it along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are a few tips. I'll just go over them real quick. They can designate somebody that they trust as their financialist or as their financial advisor, have them look at anything before they pull money out of the bank and send it somewhere. They can appoint a trusted contact for all their accounts and investments so that the bank can make a phone call before they distribute that money out. Sign up for a service that tracks their bank accounts, investments and credit cards, and they can always stay in touch with older loved ones, or they can contact a police officer at any time and they will come out and at least try to provide some type of guidance or advice before they make those decisions to send money to an unknown person on the phone.
Thank you. Director Goff.
Yes. Hi, Chief. Thank you for coming again tonight. And I just wanted to say, I neglected to say in the earlier update, give you a special thank you for all the extra time you've given our committee. So that I feel like should also be in the report because he's really been so generous with his time as we work on this building issue. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'll be honest, if I had known you were that determined and that time, I would have handed you an application for police officer a long time ago.
Never know.
Great. Thank you, Chief Kankas. Any other questions or comments from the public? The board? Seeing none, hearing none. The next item is board correspondence. There's none. All right, then our next regular meeting will be on March 9th. We will keep the community informed about any potential special meetings, and we'll also put the information up about this community meeting. So thank you, everyone. The meeting's adjourned. It's 9:06.
Thank you.